How did I let it come to this? How did I become the villain in my own life? Betraying the very trust that should have been unshakable? I have destroyed everything, my family, my integrity, my sense of self, for what? A fleeting moment of selfishness, of weakness? The look in Jason's eyes burns through me. The disgust, the disappointment, the raw betrayal. I have ruined him. I have ruined myself. No excuse, no reasoning can undo this. I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve redemption. I have shattered everything, and I can never take it back. The house was too quiet. The kind of silence that pressed down on my chest, making me hyper-aware of every creak, every whisper of wind against the windows. Greg had left early that morning for a business trip, his absence leaving behind an eerie stillness that I couldn't quite shake. Normally, I would have relished the solitude, an evening to unwind, a rare moment to enjoy the house as my own. But tonight, something felt different, off. Zoilus, my stepson, had moved back in just a few weeks ago, his presence barely noticeable most days. He was polite, independent, careful not to impose, and yet, I felt him. I couldn't explain it, but I knew he was near, lingering just out of sight. As I poured myself a glass of wine, letting the dim glow of the living room lamp soften the edges of my thoughts, a faint sound reached my ears, a floorboard shifting in the hallway. My breath caught. I turned my head, staring at the darkened corridor beyond the kitchen. The house groaned with the weight of its age. But this was different. This was deliberate. Someone was there, watching, and for the first time that night, I wasn't alone. The sound came again, a slow, measured creak, as if someone was carefully placing their weight to avoid being caught. A chill ran down my spine, my fingers tightening around the stem of my wine glass. My pulse quickened, an uneasy thrill humming beneath my skin. I turned my head toward the hallway, the darkness stretching like an open mouth, waiting. My breath felt too loud in the stillness. I wasn't imagining it. Someone was there, watching. Zoilus? My voice was steady, but I wasn't sure how. A pause. Then, the faintest shift of movement, barely perceptible, and then, his voice, low, quiet. Yeah. Relief and something far more dangerous washed over me at once. I exhaled, shaking my head. Why are you lurking? Another pause. Longer this time. I couldn't see him, but I could feel him hesitating. The tension stretched tight, invisible strings pulling the air taut between us. Then, he stepped forward, into the dim light. Zoilus stood in the archway, one hand gripping the doorframe. His face was shadowed, unreadable, but his posture was tense, like he was bracing for something. The soft glow from the lamp carved out the sharp angles of his jaw, the strong line of his shoulders. He was no longer the boy I had met years ago when I married his father. He was a man now, and the way he looked at me, the weight of it, sent an unsteady ripple through me. I wasn't lurking, he said finally. His voice was calm, but something lingered underneath it. I just couldn't sleep. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Couldn't sleep. So you decided to stand in the dark hallway? He gave a half smile, but there was no humor in it. I heard you moving around, he admitted, his gaze flicking to my bare shoulders, then back to my eyes. I don't know why I stopped, but we both knew that wasn't true. I should have told him to go back to bed, should have dismissed this strange moment for what it was, an awkward misunderstanding. But instead, I stood there, the air between us shifting, thickening. The silence felt intimate, like an unspoken agreement had already been made. You're staring, I said, softer than I meant to. His jaw tightened, his fingers flexing where they rested against the wood. I know, the words shouldn't have sent heat curling in my stomach, but they did. My silk robe, once comfortable, now felt like a flimsy barrier, the fabric cool against my suddenly warm skin. I swallowed, forcing my breath to slow. This is inappropriate, I said, though my voice lacked conviction. Zoilus didn't move, but his eyes searched mine, reading every flicker of hesitation, every unspoken thought. Then tell me to leave, he murmured, and I will. The challenge lingered between us. I opened my mouth, but no words came. The air pulsed, and in that breathless silence, we both knew I wasn't going to say it. The silence between us thickened, the weight of it pressing into my chest like a held breath that refused to release. My lips parted, the words forming, leave, stop. This is wrong. But they never left my mouth. Instead, I just stood there, caught in the force of his gaze, trapped in something I didn't fully understand. Zoilus took a slow step forward. Not aggressive, not rushed, just deliberate. Testing. His presence felt enormous, filling the space between us with something heavy. Something charged. The soft glow from the lamp cast shadows over his face, deepening the intensity in his dark eyes. "You're not saying it," he murmured. My throat was dry. I should. Another step. He was close now, so close I could feel the warmth radiating from him. The scent of soap and something distinctly masculine curling into the air between us. My heart pounded, each beat a warning, a plea, a desperate attempt to regain control. But I didn't move. He hesitated, his fingers twitching at his sides, like he wanted to reach for me but was still holding himself back. "I don't know when this happened," he admitted, voice low and rough, "but I can't stop thinking about you." His words sent a shiver down my spine, cooling heat in my stomach. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms in a feeble attempt to ground myself. "This isn't right. This isn't right. And yet, tell me to leave," he said again, softer this time, a quiet plea wrapped in a dare. "I should. God, I should." Instead, I whispered, "Zoilus?" That was all it took. His hand brushed my arm. Featherlight, testing the boundary, waiting for me to flinch, to pull away, but I didn't. His fingers trailed upward, slow and reverent, tracing the bare skin of my shoulder. The silk robe slipped slightly, bearing more than it should. And I shivered, not from the cool air, but from the electricity racing through me. "You're shaking," he murmured. I swallowed hard, my breath uneven. "This is dangerous." "I know." His fingers trailed higher, up the curve of my neck, pausing just beneath my jaw. His touch was hesitant, almost reverent, and it sent fire through my veins. I closed my eyes, exhaling shakily, my body betraying every protest my mind tried to make. "This can't happen," I whispered. His thumb brushed against my cheek, his breath warm as he leaned in just enough for me to feel him. Not touching, not yet, but waiting, giving me the chance to stop this. "Then stop me," he murmured. I opened my eyes, locking onto his, and for a long moment, neither of us moved. The air pulsed between us, filled with the weight of every unspoken thought, every forbidden desire we had both tried so hard to ignore. And then, slowly, deliberately, I tilted my face toward his. I didn't stop him. The moment hung between us, fragile and electric, the last chance to stop before the point of no return. My breath came shallow, my body taut with anticipation. Zoilus didn't move, not yet. His fingers lingered against my skin, warm and uncertain, his chest rising and falling in time with my own unsteady breaths. My mind screamed at me to pull away, to put distance between us before this turned into something we couldn't take back. But my body, the deep, unspoken part of me that had ignored this truth for far too long, refused to listen. His thumb brushed my lower lip, his touch featherlight, and I exhaled shakily. His gaze flickered downward, watching the way my lips parted involuntarily, his own breath hitching in response. I felt the hesitation in him, the last remnants of restraint warring with whatever storm raged beneath his surface. "We can't," I whispered, though my voice lacked any real strength. Zoilus swallowed hard, then stopped me. I couldn't. My pulse pounded in my ears as he leaned in, slow, giving me every chance to turn away, to push him back, to break whatever spell we had fallen under. But I stayed frozen, locked in place by the sheer force of his presence. Then, finally, his lips met mine. The first touch was hesitant, careful, as if he was afraid I might disappear beneath him. But the moment I responded, the moment my lips parted ever so slightly against his, all hesitation vanished. A low sound rumbled from his chest as his hands found my waist, gripping me with an urgency that sent heat racing through my body. He pulled me closer, and I gasped into his mouth, the sensation of being pressed against him breaking what little resolve I had left. His kiss deepened, no longer just hesitant exploration but something more, something desperate, hungry, filled with the weight of everything we had suppressed for too long. My fingers tangled in his shirt, gripping the fabric as if holding onto him would keep me steady when everything else was spinning out of control. The silk of my robe slipped further down my shoulder, and Zoilus's lips left mine, trailing down the side of my neck, each kiss searing against my skin. My breath hitched, my head tilting back instinctively, giving him more access, more permission, more of everything I shouldn't be offering. This is insane, I whispered, though my fingers betrayed me, tightening around him instead of pushing him away. Zoilus's hands flexed against my waist. I don't care, he murmured against my skin, his voice rough with need. Do you? I should have said yes. I should have ended it right there. But instead, I let my hands slide up his chest, feeling the way his heart pounded just as wildly as mine, and whispered the only truth that mattered in that moment. No. And just like that, the last thread of restraint snapped. The world outside faded, reduced to nothing but the heat between us, the frantic beating of my heart, and the way Zoilus held me like I was something he had been dying to touch for far too long. His grip on my waist tightened, his fingers pressing into my skin with a hunger that sent shivers racing down my spine. My silk robe had slipped dangerously low, barely clinging to my shoulders, and the cool air against my exposed skin only heightened the contrast of his warmth. I should have stopped. I should have pulled back, wrapped the robe tightly around myself, and forced the words past my lips. This is wrong. We can't do this. But those words had lost their meaning the moment his lips found mine. Zoilus's mouth was on my collarbone now, his breath warm, his lips tracing slow, reverent kisses along the sensitive skin. My body arched into him before I could stop it, my fingers threading through his hair, holding him close. A soft, strangled sound escaped my lips, and I felt him tense, his breath hitching against my skin. You have no idea what you do to me, he murmured, his voice rough, unsteady. His words sent fire through my veins, a sharp thrill sparking deep inside me. My hands moved without thought, sliding over the firm muscles of his shoulders, feeling the restrained tension coiled beneath his skin. He was holding himself back. I realized, even now, as his lips found the curve of my neck, as his hands skimmed along my waist. He was waiting for me to give him permission, to tell him I wanted this as much as he did. And I did. God, I did. My breath came in short, uneven gasps as I turned my head, my lips brushing the shell of his ear. Then don't stop, I whispered. A groan tore from his throat. And that was it. That was the moment everything shifted. The last thread of restraint snapped. And in the next breath, I found myself against the wall, my back pressing into the cool surface as Zoilus claimed my lips again. This time without hesitation, without the careful hesitancy that had been there before. His hands gripped my thighs, lifting me effortlessly, pinning me between him and the unforgiving wall. I gasped against his mouth, my fingers digging into his shoulders for support. But he held me firm, as if he had no intention of letting me go. The air between us burned, filled with a tension so thick it was suffocating. Yet I craved more, needed more. His lips left mine, tracing a path down my jaw, over the hollow of my throat, each kiss leaving me breathless. My head tipped back against the wall, my body arching into him as he pressed closer, his hands sliding lower, gripping me tighter. I don't want to stop, he admitted, his voice hoarse, filled with something raw and desperate. I looked down at him, meeting his gaze, and for a moment, everything was still. Then don't, I whispered, and neither of us did. The heat between us built to something uncontrollable, something neither of us had the strength, or the will, to resist. My breath was shallow, my pulse pounding against my skin as Zoilus's hands gripped me with a desperation that sent a wild thrill through me. His body pressed against mine, firm and unyielding, as if he was afraid that if he let go, I would disappear. And maybe I would have. Maybe the weight of reality would have come crashing down the moment I stepped away. The guilt and shame flooding in to smother this reckless desire. But here, in this moment, there was no past, no future, only the fire consuming us whole. Zoilus's lips found mine again, rougher this time, filled with a hunger that sent a dizzying wave through me. My fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, needing to feel him against me. A deep groan rumbled from his chest as he pressed harder against me, his hands roaming my body like he was memorizing every curve, every reaction, every unspoken plea I wasn't strong enough to deny. His mouth traced a path down my neck. His breath hot against my skin. "You drive me insane," he murmured, his voice thick with restraint, though his hands betrayed him, gripping me tighter, holding me as if I belonged to him. A shiver ran through me. Not from fear, not from hesitation, but from the sheer intensity of his presence. I had never felt so utterly desired, so consumed, so lost in something that I knew I shouldn't want, but did. God, I did. I gasped as his hands slid lower, gripping my hips, his fingers pressing into my skin. Every touch sent fire coursing through my veins, every movement pushing me further away from reason and deeper into this intoxicating madness. Zoilus? I breathed his name, my voice barely more than a whisper. He paused for the briefest moment, his forehead resting against mine, his breath ragged. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, though there was no conviction in his words, only a desperate, silent plea for me not to. I met his gaze, my heart hammering in my chest. The intensity in his eyes stole my breath, dark and filled with something deeper than just desire. It was need, longing, a hunger that had simmered beneath the surface for too long. Waiting, until now. I should have ended it there. I should have said his name again. Softer this time, a warning, a regretful plea for him to step back. But I didn't. Instead, my fingers tightened in his hair, pulling him down to meet my lips once more. A silent answer to the question he had been too afraid to ask aloud. His restraint shattered. With a low, guttural sound, he lifted me effortlessly, carrying me toward the bed, his grip firm, his movements sure, and as we fell into the soft sheets, as his body covered mine, as the last shreds of hesitation melted away beneath the weight of our shared hunger, nothing else existed. Not the world, not the consequences, only us. The room was thick with heat, the air heavy with the aftermath of what we had just done. My breath was still uneven, my body trembling from the storm we had unleashed. Zoilus lay beside me, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, though his grip on my waist remained firm, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. The sheets were tangled around us, the silk of my robe barely clinging to my shoulders, a flimsy reminder of the barrier that had once existed between us but had now been shattered beyond repair. Reality was creeping in at the edges, cold and sharp, threatening to pierce through the intoxicating haze of our passion. My mind screamed at me to move, to do something, to acknowledge the magnitude of what had happened. But I couldn't, not yet. I lay still, staring up at the ceiling, my heartbeat still too loud in my ears. Zoilus shifted beside me, his fingers tracing absent-minded circles along my skin. "Are you okay?" he murmured, his voice hoarse, uncertain. The question sent a shiver down my spine, not because I wasn't okay, but because I didn't know how to answer it. I turned my head toward him, meeting his gaze. His dark eyes held something I couldn't quite name, a mix of satisfaction, concern, and something far more dangerous. It made my chest tighten. I swallowed hard. "I don't know." His brows furrowed slightly, his fingers stilling against my skin. "Do you regret it?" Regret. The word hung between us like a knife, sharp and ready to cut. My lips parted, the answer forming on my tongue before I could stop it. "No." Zoilus exhaled, his grip on my waist tightening. His body relaxed slightly, but the tension in his gaze didn't fade. "But that doesn't mean it wasn't," I hesitated, forcing myself to find the right words. "Dangerous." His jaw clenched, and he pushed himself up on one elbow, looking down at me. "I know," he admitted, "but I don't care." I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment, willing my thoughts to settle, to make sense of the mess we had just created. When I opened them again, he was still watching me, waiting. "Zoilus," I whispered, reaching up to trace my fingers along his jaw. He leaned into my touch, closing his eyes briefly before exhaling sharply. "I won't pretend this isn't complicated," he murmured, his hand sliding up to cover mine. "But tell me you don't want this. Tell me you didn't feel what I felt." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out, because I couldn't lie to him. His eyes darkened as he studied me, reading every hesitation, every fear, every unspoken truth. He leaned in slowly, his breath warm against my lips. "I don't want this to be the last time," he admitted, his voice barely more than a whisper. Neither did I, and that terrified me. A deep, Uneasy silence settled between us, stretching the space between reality and whatever this was, this thing we had become. Zoilus's words still hung in the air, heavy, unrelenting. I don't want this to be the last time. Neither did I, and that terrified me. I should have pulled away. I should have let the weight of reason sink in. Should have acknowledged the gravity of what we had done. Instead, I found myself staring at him, at the way his eyes darkened with something raw and unfiltered. Desire, yes, but more than that. Possession, a silent claim. This can't happen again, I whispered, though even I didn't believe the words as they left my lips. Zoilus's fingers brushed against my jaw, tilting my chin upward, forcing me to meet his gaze. Then tell me you didn't want it, he said, his voice a low challenge. Tell me this was just a mistake. I swallowed, my throat dry, my pulse hammering against my skin. It was a mistake, I murmured, but my voice wavered. His thumb traced the edge of my lower lip, his touch almost reverent. Liar. The word sent a shiver down my spine. And I hated how easily he unraveled me. Hated how my body betrayed me even as my mind screamed for restraint. I exhaled sharply, turning away, forcing distance between us as I sat up and wrapped the silk robe tightly around myself. My hands trembled as I tied the sash, each movement a desperate attempt to rebuild the walls that had crumbled so easily just moments ago. We can't do this, I said again, this time more to myself than to him. It's wrong. Zoilus sat up too, his bare chest illuminated by the dim glow of the bedside lamp. He looked at me like I was something fragile, something slipping through his fingers. I don't care, he admitted, and the honesty in his voice sent a fresh wave of panic through me. I shook my head, pressing my fingers to my temples. You should care, Zoilus. This isn't just about us. His jaw tightened. Then who is it about? My father? The world outside that doesn't know what this feels like? He leaned closer, his voice rough, strained. Tell me, do you feel guilty because it's wrong? Or because you liked it? My breath hitched. His words hit their mark with unerring accuracy, exposing the war raging inside me. I should have felt disgust, shame. I should have wanted to run. But all I felt was an ache that wouldn't go away. I stood abruptly, my legs shaky beneath me. This has to stop. Zoilus's gaze was unwavering, sharp as a blade. You don't mean that. I did. I had to. But as I turned toward the door, heart hammering, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Someone was outside, listening, watching. The sound of footsteps sent a violent shiver through me, my body going rigid as the reality of the situation crashed down like a tidal wave. I wasn't just standing in a dimly lit bedroom with my stepson. Wrapped in a silk robe that barely covered the evidence of what we'd done, I was standing on the precipice of absolute disaster. And someone was outside that door. Zoilus heard it too. His entire posture shifted, his muscles tensing like a predator caught in a trap. His gaze flicked to the door, then back to me, searching my face for what to do next. My breath caught in my throat, panic squeezing my lungs tight. Who was it? The hallway was dark. The house had been silent just moments before. Had they been there the whole time? Had they heard? The seconds stretched endlessly, each one more suffocating than the last. Then, another step, closer. My pulse slammed against my ribs. And before I could think, Zoilus moved. In a swift, silent motion, he crossed the room, pressing his back against the wall beside the door. His body coiled like a spring, ready for whatever was about to happen. My voice caught in my throat as the door handle twitched. It didn't open. Whoever was on the other side was hesitating, as if debating whether to enter or walk away. My heart pounded so hard it hurt, my fingers digging into the fabric of my robe as I pressed myself against the dresser, trying to steady the trembling in my hands. Then, silence. Agonizing, endless silence. I held my breath. Zoilus's eyes locked onto mine, sharp and unreadable. Then, after what felt like a lifetime, the footsteps retreated. One step, another, fainter, and then, gone. A sharp exhale burst from my lips, my entire body sagging against the dresser. My heart still thundered, every nerve frayed, but the absence of sound told me one thing: whoever had been there had chosen to leave. Zoilus remained frozen for another few seconds before exhaling. his hands flexing at his sides. That was close, he muttered, his voice still thick with tension. I shook my head, pressing a hand against my chest as if that would slow the wild rhythm of my heart. Who was that? His jaw clenched. I don't know. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to move. My legs felt weak, my thoughts a chaotic mess. I paced toward the door, pressing my ear against the wood. Listening. Nothing. We can't stay here, I whispered, the weight of our mistake sinking into me like a stone. Someone knows. Zoilus. Someone saw. He stepped closer, his presence a steady force behind me. Or maybe they only suspect. His fingers brushed my arm, grounding me. Either way, we'll handle it. I turned to face him, fear gripping me tight. And if they tell? Zoilus's gaze darkened, his voice unwavering. Then we make sure they don't. The weight of Zoilus's words settled over me like a suffocating fog. Then we make sure they don't. It wasn't a threat, not exactly, but there was an edge to his voice, something dark, something unyielding, that sent a shiver through me. I swallowed hard, my pulse hammering in my ears. You don't even know who it was. Zoilus's gaze didn't waver. Then we find out. His certainty should have scared me. But instead, it steadied something inside me. Something raw and tangled. I didn't want to be afraid. I didn't want to sit here, waiting for the inevitable fallout. I needed to know. I moved to the door, hesitating for only a moment before I cracked it open. Just enough to peer into the dimly lit hallway. The silence was thick, pressing against my ears, but the air felt charged, like the ghost of something that had just been there still lingered. Nothing moved. I stepped out cautiously, Zoilus right behind me, his presence a shadow at my back. My bare feet made no sound against the cool floor as I moved forward, scanning the hallway for any sign of who had been listening. My breath came in shallow pulls, my fingers gripping the silk of my robe as if it were armor. The corridor stretched before us, empty, but something in my gut told me that whoever had been there hadn't just walked away without reason. They had left because they knew they had been caught. Zoilus's voice was low, close to my ear. Downstairs. I turned my head slightly, my heart pounding at the nearness of him, at the quiet intensity in his tone. How do you know? He nodded toward the faintest glow of light spilling from the bottom of the staircase. Because they didn't go back to a bedroom. They're waiting. A cold wave of unease crept up my spine. Waiting for what? Zoilus moved first, descending the stairs with careful, measured steps. I followed, my breath catching as the light grew brighter, revealing the faint flicker of movement just beyond the living room archway. And then I saw him. Jason. He was sitting in the armchair, elbows resting on his knees, his fingers interlaced, his gaze locked onto the floor. The tension in his posture, the way his jaw clenched. He had been waiting. For me. For us. My stomach twisted into a knot. My son. My own son. The look on his face, he already knew. He didn't move when I stepped closer. Didn't look up when Zoilus positioned himself slightly in front of me. A protective stance that only made the sickening reality more unbearable. The silence stretched, thick and unbearable. Then, finally, Jason exhaled sharply, shaking his head as if trying to clear the image burned into his mind. I didn't want to believe it, he murmured, voice tight with something between anger and disbelief. But now I don't have a choice. My throat tightened. Jason. He looked up then, his eyes locking onto mine. What the hell have you done? Life is filled with temptations, moral dilemmas, and moments where emotions overpower reason. The story serves as a stark reminder that every choice we make has consequences, especially when boundaries are blurred. In today's world, where secrecy is fleeting and truth often surfaces in unexpected ways, it's crucial to recognize the impact of our actions, not just on ourselves, but on those around us. Desire can be intoxicating, but integrity is what defines us. Before making any decision that could alter relationships forever, ask yourself, is this worth the fallout? Because once a line is crossed, there is no going back.